Egypt, a world where the sun fails to rise tomorrow if the Pharaoh ignores his sacred duty. Imagine the civilization whose calendar, economy, entire understanding of life and death revolves around the Pharaoh and his godlike power to flood the Nile River. That was ancient Egypt, a kingdom that masters its environment, build an eternal world. But the most important lesson they teach us is not how they built that world, but why we were destined to build a completely different one. I'm Mr. Hall. This is Ancient History. Welcome to Classical Kingdoms, where timeless stories reveal truth and wisdom for your journey. And this journey for you is Kemet, Egypt, the genesis of this incredible civilization. Imagine that you are the Pharaoh. You're more than just a king. You are God on earth, the rising of the sun, the flooding of the great river, the harvest that feeds your people. It all depends on you. The weight of this entire cosmos rests on your shoulder. So picture this land, but there's stark contrast. This thin, vibrant ribbon of black, fertile earth that's teeming with life. It's surrounded on all sides by an endless sun-scorched red desert. For the people living there, this wasn't just geography, it was a map of the universe. The black land was order, life, civilization. Red land, chaos, danger, and death. And their mission for thousands of years was to maintain the delicate balance, keep the chaos at bay. They succeeded on a scale that's unimaginable, creating a society of immense wealth and stability. And the pyramids, lots of breathtaking monuments. Was this all because of the Pharaoh? That was the reality of ancient Old Kingdom Egypt. They commanded a level of absolute power and devotion that's hard for us to even comprehend. You know the pyramids, but then it's going to come crashing down, not the structures, but the idea of why you would even build tombs like that. So if you were there with the ancient Egyptians, how would you make sense of it all? How do you separate the order from the chaos? Let's go to the beginning of Egypt. Let's look at the Old Kingdom, the Middle Kingdom, because we need to understand the rise and the fall and the rebirth to grasp the Pharaoh and his justification of massive power and the shift that's going to happen, because it's going to reveal to us our real beginnings and the directions that our society actually took. So by completing lesson number 9 in your ancient history course, you will get this full understanding. The Old Kingdom, the Middle Kingdom of Egypt, kind of a pre-run to other Bronze Age civilizations, and then the New Kingdom later in a future lesson. This is lesson number 9. In your ancient history course, we're stepping into the story of Old Kingdom and Middle Kingdom Egypt to ask the big questions and discover how it shaped history and how it still shapes your journey. So, in this lesson, first, we will discover the powerful truths of the Nile River. It's a single geographical feature that's very unique, and it's everything to Egypt. Second, we will enter the age of the pyramid builders and try to understand the ideology. Why do you even do this? How much power does the Pharaoh have? Third, let's witness a rebirth in Egypt into the Middle Kingdom, which many call a golden age. They've overcome some interesting struggles, so we will see. And finally, as a bonus, it's extracting the wisdom, the ultimate question of legacy, because they are like a counterpoint against later the Greeks, like Alexander taking over this place. It's going to help us see what wisdom is carried forward, what philosophy, what gifts of the Nile do we still appreciate? So by the end of this episode, you will level up as a classical scholar and a philosopher and an Egyptologist. So let's take one step further in your classical journey. This is ancient Egypt. Have you thought much about the way landscape and weather and the environment dictates how you live? You know, here in Ohio, it's 4 seasons. We've got corn, we've got soybeans, we've got cities. for ancient Egypt, it's everything. There is one unique geographic feature that does it all. It's the Nile. It's the flooding Nile River. 4,132 miles of lifeblood for Egypt. Not all of that is Egyptian, but the Nile is the longest river in the world, and it's the heart of Egypt's stability because it floods. It's called the inundation period. It's like one of their 3 seasons. It's predictable. And you know every single year that this is supposed to happen. It pretty much always does. And it's not just water. You also got, what is this? Does it look nice and black? And silt. It's not crushed Oreos. It's silt. It's soil. It's dirt. But it's not clay. It's not dry and lifeless. It's got iron and nutrients. It's got silica. It's got organic material. And it comes every year in, like it's why rivers look muddy. So when these floods come and it fills up the field, it leaves behind the soil, the moisture. It's a miracle. And the Egyptians saw it as a miracle. The inundation, they had a name for it, the Akhet, which is one of their 3 seasons. The Peret is the growing season. And the Shemu, when you harvest. And those are the 3 seasons. Otherwise, this place is a desert, a total desert. So there's some magic here with the gift of the Nile. And they developed a very sophisticated basin irrigation system. Basin irrigation. What is basin irrigation? You trap the floodwaters for about 45 days to saturate the soil, but also then the dirt is left behind. So they would have this system in place, organized by the government. It's a delicate balance. Now, the flood that's too low, you got problems because you can't fill in these basin areas. And if the flood's too high, problems there too. But the Nile was less destructive than the problems they had in the Mesopotamian floods. The Mesopotamian floods could be way more extreme. 2200 BC, there was a 200-year drop in the Nile's flow. So this may have contributed to some of the problems that we'll talk about later in this lesson. But how do you manage the risk? How did they still develop an incredible civilization in the very early times? The control of the waters, the centralized Egyptian government, because we're going to learn the Pharaoh is everything. He really was ruler, priest, and God, and they claimed his godlike status as making this river flood. But of course, he would have administrators, he would have people helping to organize to make sure this environmental challenge could be overcome. But the Egyptians saw the magic of Egypt because you look just a little away from the Kemet. You know, that's the actual name of Egypt. Kemet means black land, right? Black soil. It's magic. You go a little far away outside of the floodplain of the Nile, it's a total desert. So the realm of order, the civilization and life that they saw was the Kemet. And if you went out, it's the red land, the deseret. The red land is colored by the iron-rich sand, like that's been rusting out there. You know how iron and rust is kind of that reddish color, and that's why you go far away from the Nile River, which is not very far. The Nile is really just it, because these beautiful desert lands are nice to look at, but you can't survive there. So if you lived on this thin ribbon through the Nile, you look at the map, you look at it from a satellite, and you can see it's just a thin area. The geography, the reality of it, they just saw it as magic. And this is the cosmos, the cosmology. They had some religious beliefs that go with this, right? The divine order that kept life on that narrow strip, on that Kemet, the black land. They have force of chaos out there in the desert. The forces of disorder had to be captured and controlled. And the Pharaoh's number one job was to guarantee this order. The Maat, M-A-A-T, to ensure the order, the life, the country. And so it develops their worldview because they see the Pharaoh, the magic, the God status that he got, and the predictable flooding, as long as it predictably floods, which it pretty much does. But the outside world is inferior. It's dangerous. It's deadly. The desert is not a place you can go. Their unique geography doesn't just provide them the food, but it gives them their religion, their worldview, their government. This is a classical journey into history, virtue, and wonder. And it's good to know the old kingdom of Egypt is coming next. How did they set up their societies in this magical Nile River valley? So the predictable annual flood of the Nile was the foundation and the stability of Egypt. And the black land, the Kemet. Do you like the black land? Click the like button. It's not crushed Oreos, but you can like those too. And the managing of this, their basin irrigation, they did well. This is a successful place. The black land, the Kemet, the red land, the Deseret. Stay away from the chaos, and the Pharaoh will help bring order to this society, the beautiful land of Egypt. So we have this Egyptian world built on the rhythm of the Nile, a world that's obsessed with order versus chaos that the Pharaoh needs to help us with. This is a 660-mile river valley. How do you unite these people in a long, skinny country like this? So Egypt, for centuries, the early days, they were divided. Two kingdoms. You have the upper kingdom down here in the south, upper in elevation. And the Pharaoh would wear the white crown. It's like a cone head. The Hedjet, cone head, the white cone head. Lower Egypt is in the north, up here. Bottom elevation, right by the sea. And their Pharaoh would wear a red crown. It's like a wraparound kind of thing, the Desheret. Around 3100 BC. It's time for a love story, right? Because we're going to see a powerful southern king named Narmer. He'll conquer the north. He'll unify the two lands, but he's going to do it with a love story, a marriage, perhaps. Now, he captures the land. We have it on the Narmer palette. By the way, the Narmer palette is our archaeological evidence, and this is the beginning of the first dynasty. You know, once they get married and have kids, they've got a dynasty, right? Narmer created this idea that we are the two lands, and he is the Lord of two lands, the ruler of Upper and Lower Egypt. He's very special, and he's the wearer of two crowns. This is the one I really like. The double crown is the, like, physically you're going to put two crowns on your head. You got the white cone head, you got the red wraparound, and they call him that, the wearer of two crowns, the Lord of two lands, and he united it. But what about that love story? He marries the princess of the Lower Egypt land. Lower Egypt had the princess Imhotep, and she marries Narmer. So everybody's happy now, right? Not necessarily, because to justify the power that the Pharaoh has, he is going to be the absolute ruler. You need a little more. And maybe you've learned this in one of our other lessons. How do you get even more power? Besides a wedding, besides winning the conquered land, the Pharaoh was not just a king. He is going to rule by divine right. He was also God incarnate. He was a living God on earth. So the Egyptians are the first to do this anywhere on the planet, to have their rulers be gods, and they're also priests too. So specifically, the living Pharaoh was the earthly manifestation of the falcon god. Do you know this falcon god, Horus? The falcon god Horus is the divine embodiment of the order, right? That you need the order. You can't have the chaos in the red desert. That makes his kingship the rightful kingship. When the king died, he would merge with the father of Horus, Osiris, the ruler of the underworld. So his heir would become the new Horus, Does this work to get you some extra power, some extra authority here? It is part of an eternal cycle of divine rule if you live as Horus and you die as Osiris. So this made the Pharaoh the sole intermediary between the gods and humanity. So he's the priest, ruler, priest, and God. The rising of the sun, the flooding of the Nile, the well-being of the entire cosmos, it all rested on his shoulder. Do you agree with this? Because rebellion was not an option. If you rebelled against the Pharaoh, it's not just treason, it is sacrilege. You're going against religion. So step into the mind of a key historical figure to see how this idea transformed the Egyptian world. You are now Imhotep, vizier of the Pharaoh Djoser, and it's 2670 BC. So if Imhotep believes all this that we're talking about, what should you do? What do you do when you have ruler, priest, and God? And he's Horus, and then he's Osiris. What do you do? Build a tomb? Do you build a nice tomb? Do you create a monument that ensures eternal glory and the journey to the stars that solidifies the divine power for everyone to see now? We can still see it. It's still a monument that's there. And these are from the Old Kingdom. The Old Kingdom of Egypt was building these massive, monumental, well, in this case, it's a mastaba. It's a flat-topped tomb. The mastaba, it's good. Like, that's a good monument, but could you go any further than that? He began with the mastaba and then decided to build another mastaba on top, and then another mastaba on top. So we've now created the step pyramid of Djoser. That step pyramid, as we can see, is literally a stairway to heaven. That was part of the justification of it, this architectural leap from the old mastaba system that they did before. It is solidifying the theology, the divine kingship, and we're putting it into a physical reality. This innovation gets perfected by the 4th dynasty because Khufu, Khafre, they have the Great Pyramids. The Great Pyramid of Khufu is the last surviving 7 wonder of the ancient world. There are 7 wonders of the ancient world, and this one we can see. The Great Pyramid, and the setting here, it's 2.3 million blocks of stone. It would weigh just, at least 6 million tons. It's the tallest man-made structure on the planet for over 3,800 years. Nothing was taller than this. It's about a 40-story building tall. Guarding these monuments, we have the Great Sphinx. The Great Sphinx, the world's largest monolithic statue. What is monolithic? Monolithic means one stone, lithic, lithos. One stone. It is carved from one stone, the Great Sphinx, with the body of a lion and the head of King, we don't know for sure, but it's probably Khafre, we think, the Great Sphinx. Now, I know I've taught this to my students. There's a great deal of excitement when we get to this every year. People want to bring the mummies, the decorations that the Egyptians have on the mummies, what's inside the tombs. We'll talk about that in a future lesson because King Tut's tomb is from the New Kingdom period. And this lesson is Old Kingdom and Middle Kingdom. And they can't keep building these pyramids. They only are building them in the Old Kingdom. In class, kids, we're very excited about these topics of mummies, the decorations, the pyramids. And they want to know, how are these things built? So excavations have revealed there was a lot of organization, and we don't think that they were slaves, that this was a paid force. They must have had a lot of money, a lot of surplus crops to pay for all of this. Egyptian citizens that were well-fed. They received a lot of good medical care. It doesn't look like they were an oppressed group of slaves. They're at least well taken care of. It was a national project to build these pyramids. It took decades to build these massive tombs, 20 or 30,000 workers. This might be your career. It forged unity in the state. The Pharaoh unifies people. And more than the weddings and what Narmer did, and now these massive tombs and these monuments to the Pharaoh is everything. And so, yes, we want to build him a great pyramid. It's the result of a very strong state. Lots of surplus, lots of money. Let me know in the comments below what aspect of the pyramids, the Sphinx, or this oldest portion of Egypt's history, the Old Kingdom, what fascinates you? What jumps out? Is it the scale of engineering, the purpose behind them? It was the unification that King Narmer started to become the Lord of Upper and Lower Egypt, the ruler of two lands. To justify this, he had to be a god. And pharaohs are going to be gods. And that will continue for a while. It's an ideology that gets expressed in their architecture and these great pyramids. We're still looking at them today. Egypt is really something. Every year when I teach this, we try to put the fun mummies and pyramids and things and keep that at the beginning to show the contrast of what we're getting into next year in the third segment. It was kind of a rough crash of everything that we talked about in the previous segment. And here's what, if we had had more time to really build up the bureaucrats, they're the ones doing all the work. So how long can you really keep that pharaoh in this absolute crazy high status of being ruler, priest, and God? Think about a time where this trusted system that you put everything into, it just falls apart. A team that was always winning and just suddenly nobody's getting along. No one's playing well. It's just lining up a series of failures. So your perspective changes, right? You question everything. Or you look for a solution. After the Old Kingdom collapsed, Egypt endured a century of civil war, chaos, fighting. Who was it? Well, during the first intermediate period, we see it's the bureaucrats and the priests, the people that are actually doing a lot of the work. The divine order is essentially broken then, right? Because the pharaoh is not everything. It's time to put this back into something. Stop the fighting. What is our ideology now? What does it shift to? How do you restore faith in the leadership? Let's skip ahead to the year 2055 BC. A powerful southern king, Mentuhotep II, forcefully reunites Egypt, bringing the Middle Kingdom to the beginning. The era is Egypt's golden age for some experts and Egyptologists. They say this one is the best because the pharaohs are more balanced. The success is extended. Their old foundations are repaired into a different new ideology where the God King is brought down to reality a little bit. The pharaohs are not quite this total absolute ruler. So let's put more power into the hands of the actual bureaucrats. And let's call the pharaoh still the shepherd of his people. Doesn't that sound more caring, vigilant, and he's our protector? Doesn't that mean he's going to care about the welfare of his people? His legitimacy no longer rests on divine birth and a lot of myths. He understands that a good bureaucratic government with public works and protecting the nation, having a good army, that's what people really need. So the kingship now is more what we can relate to in a lot of these other ancient civilizations. You even see it in the arts, Middle Kingdom art, like Senusret III. It looks more realistic. The people look more like people, even though they're godlike pharaohs. So this is political propaganda, as art always is, and it visually communicates the burden of the king and the humanity of him. You know, he's still our pharaoh, but his rule seems to have been brought down just a little bit. The classical age of Egyptian literature is sometimes looked at right here. The great narrative works like the story of Sinuhe, exploring the complex human themes of justice and morality. So some psychological depth with these Middle Kingdom Egyptians. Also, the societal shift is creating an unexpected consequence. The pharaohs turned their attention outward instead of just on the Nile. They actually looked beyond the southern border of what's typically Upper Egypt, and they see Nubia there. And the challenge was no longer just about staying inside the border, but considering the security that's needed to preserve their economic prosperity. So the southern border needed to be secured. And there's vast mineral wealth of Nubia, including rich gold mines in the south. So to counter the threat of powerful Nubian nations and to get the gold, pharaohs like Senuseret III launched aggressive military campaigns followed by massive fortifications to hold the position. And this is a fundamental change in Egyptian ideology. They're across their border and then they get the gold and they want to protect things. They were not trying to expand beyond into Nubian land. The Middle Kingdom is more golden, and to some it's the Golden Age. A life in Egypt that is classical. And that's why you want a classical approach, a classical education. So don't miss out on all the lessons as you compare and contrast these classical kingdoms. Classicalkingdoms.com has the full 72 ancient history lessons. In this segment, the chaos of the first intermediate period in the civil wars brought about kind of a new view in the new golden Middle Kingdom of Egypt, where the bureaucrats share the power. The shift in the Middle Kingdom, it's more golden, more balanced. They've expanded their borders. They've ensured their success. Which one do you like better? The Old Kingdom? The Middle Kingdom? Put it in the comments. What is the legacy of Egypt? You're a scholar. You see the good. You see this golden Middle Kingdom. You see the pyramids from the Old Kingdom. But what's the impact they have? How much Egypt do we have in our society? Or even back in the Middle Kingdom time? This is an isolated Egyptian society. The Nile cannot be exported. The Kemet, the black soil, is just a gift for the Egyptians. You can't export that. Now, when they did challenge that southern border and Nubia, this kingdoms started to adopt some of the Egyptian gods, that's a little bit of an impact. But let's go to the north. Let's look at the trade routes of the Mediterranean Sea. How much Egypt is spreading around? Let's go to Byblos. Byblos was an important trade partner. That is a Phoenician city-state, modern-day Lebanon. Byblos had cedar lumber. They had purple fabric. They had glass trinkets. They had dried fish. It's a trade partner with a lot of commodities that Egypt did not have. Egypt has got to get cedar. Cedar is the lumber that grows in Phoenicia around Byblos. It is perfect for building ships, and Egypt has to have trade ships. And the Phoenicians have trade ships, so there's a lot of trade going on, and that's when ideas spread. So besides the transactional, Egypt will sell you some linen. Egypt has a lot of grain. It's got surplus. There's a lot of wealth being created in this trade, but what Egyptian ideas are spreading out? What about the Egyptian model of theocracy? Their theocratic state, what is that? Do you have a theocracy? Well, you need a god that's a ruler, that's your pharaoh, your king. It's a religious government. Is that being exported? How many of the civilizations at that time are trying to build up their leaders more like a pharaoh? But it looks like it's the opposite. But a civilization like Greece is doing the opposite. It's working more towards the people. Much later, the Greeks are constantly developing governments more people-centered, power to the people. The democracy is what they will eventually export, the philosophy. And the innovation, the inventions, they're happening in other places, not so much with Egypt. So the question from the beginning, what is the contribution? What is the Pharaoh doing for me? I know what he's doing for Egypt, but what does he do for the citizens of other civilizations? And really the importance of Egypt is more for the comparison. To pursue the truth means you want to know the facts, and you can see what's good in Egypt, and there's plenty of beauty. And we all love the pyramids, and we should always check what is the latest with that. But picture yourself like an ancient historian, like Herodotus. When you arrive in Egypt for the first time, and maybe this is your first lesson, you're a homeschool student, or you skipped over, you were cheated out of this lesson in the past, and now you see Egypt. Like Herodotus famously visited Egypt, and he shared the wisdom in the Greek perspective. And so it actually helps sharpen the Greek identity. They see Egyptian theocracy and they say, no thanks. And we know our founding fathers, the United States, we said, no, thank you. Pyramids, it's a tomb for one guy. No, thank you. The gift of the Nile, it is a fascinating story, and we'll have more. We see Egypt, we visit Egypt from so many other upcoming lessons. It is part of our journey into history and virtue and wonder. But what will you carry forward from this day? What timeless human truths in our understanding of cultures and the role of the Pharaoh? And it's an incredible lesson. They were an isolated society, but they did incredible things. The classical kingdoms of this time, the Middle Kingdom of Egypt is just one, and it's golden, and spectacular things happened that. But what will you really carry forward from this age? Do you want a Pharaoh to run your government? How much did our founding fathers really import from ancient Egypt? What did we learn? Or did we use it as an important lesson of many different choices? And the Nile is an amazing gift. Every year in class, the kids just had a heightened sense of wonder about the Egyptians. They are cool. We'll have more lessons on them. Thank you for taking the time to learn something that matters in all of history, and that includes your history. Some classical truth for your journey. Because kingdoms rise and fall, power fades, but virtue endures.